The bright lights of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert gleamed off the polished stage floor as the band finished its intro riff. The audience erupted into applause, unaware that tonight's episode would soon veer into territory no one, least of all the show's producers, could have anticipated. Stephen Colbert, sharp in his midnight blue suit and armed with his trademark smirk, walked out from behind the curtain and gave the crowd his usual wave. The cameras panned in, the laughter cues rolled, and the monologue hit all the right notes: political satire, quick punchlines, and that knowing wink to his liberal-leaning audience. But tonight wasn't like other nights. Tonight, his guest was Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana, a Republican known for his Southern charm and unpredictable wit. Kennedy had made headlines that week after a fiery speech about media bias and government overreach. Colbert's team booked him, knowing his presence would bring controversy, and controversy meant ratings. Backstage, the senator adjusted his tie, his expression calm but alert. His aide, a nervous young man clutching a stack of briefing notes, leaned in. "Sir, remember, keep it light. Don't let him bait you." Kennedy gave a slow, wry smile. "Son, if Stephen Colbert wants to wrestle, I hope he's brought a good pair of boots." The stage manager called out, "Senator Kennedy, you're on in 60 seconds. The senator stepped forward, his posture confident, his accent thick as Louisiana gumbo. As the applause sign blinked on, Colbert welcomed his guest. "Please give a big Late Show welcome to Senator John Kennedy." Kennedy strode out, shook Colbert's hand, and took his seat amid the cheers. For a few moments, everything seemed cordial. Colbert opened, as usual, with charm. "Senator, thank you for joining us. You've been busy lately stirring up quite the storm in Washington." Kennedy leaned back. "Well, Stephen, I just try to say what I believe. Sometimes that gets me in trouble, sometimes it gets me dinner invitations. Depends on the crowd." The audience laughed politely. Colbert smiled. "Speaking of trouble, you made some headlines this week saying the media is, what was the phrase, about as fair as a fox in a henhouse. Care to elaborate?" Kennedy folded his hands. "I did say that, yes. And I stand by it. The media, y'all included sometimes, seem more interested in pushing stories that fit a certain narrative than telling folks what's really happening." A murmur rippled through the audience. Colbert's grin thinned. "Well, Senator, I'd argue that journalists are just doing their job, holding people in power accountable." Kennedy shot back, "Depends on which people you're talking about. Some of y'all hold folks accountable, others you hold hands with." The laughter that followed wasn't comfortable, it was electric, charged. Colbert leaned forward, sensing the tension but unwilling to yield. "So, are you suggesting that late-night hosts like me are part of that problem?" Kennedy chuckled softly. "Stephen, you're a funny man, and I like a good joke. But I reckon when your jokes start sounding more like political sermons, it stops being comedy." The crowd let out a collective, "Ooh." Colbert's eyes narrowed, the faintest glimmer of irritation showing through his polished TV persona. "Senator, my show's about satire. It's about truth through humor. I think we both know there's plenty of truth to make fun of in politics." Kennedy's voice dropped an octave. "Truth's a funny thing, Stephen. Folks like to talk about it, less like to tell it." The band members shifted uncomfortably. The camera crew glanced toward the producer, who was gesturing frantically to move on to a lighter topic. But Colbert ignored the cue. "So," he said, tapping his cue cards, "you've accused the current administration of weaponizing government agencies. That's a serious charge. Do you have actual evidence, or just more folksy metaphors?" Kennedy's jaw tightened. "Evidence. Stephen, I sit on committees that have seen enough to make a preacher cuss. If you spent half as much time asking questions as you do making jokes, maybe your audience would know it too." The air went cold. Even the laughter track operator froze. Colbert's smile vanished entirely. "Senator, are you implying that I'm part of some kind of cover-up?" Kennedy leaned forward. "I'm sayin' you're smart enough to know better than to pretend one doesn't exist." The audience gasped audibly. Colbert, caught between indignation and disbelief, waved a hand dismissively. "Well, that's quite an accusation to make on national television." Kennedy didn't flinch. So's half the stuff y'all say about people like me. Fair's fair, ain't it? For a long moment, silence filled the studio. Then Colbert, his tone icy, said, "Senator Kennedy, this is a comedy show. Maybe you'd be more comfortable on a different network." Kennedy smiled thinly. "Maybe, but it seems like you could use someone around here who's not afraid of a little truth." The audience began to boo softly, half in defense of Colbert, half in shock. Colbert raised a hand. All right, let's all take a breath. Senator Kennedy, since you're such a fan of truth, let me ask you, how do you reconcile your statements about unity with some of the more divisive things you've said on the Senate floor?" Kennedy didn't hesitate. "Easy. I tell the truth. Folks don't like it, they can vote me out. That's called democracy, not whatever circus this is." The crowd gasped again. Colbert's face flushed red. "Excuse me, Senator," he said, voice trembling slightly with anger, "but you're a guest on my show. And on my show, we treat each other with respect." Kennedy gave a low chuckle. "Respect goes both ways, Stephen. You invited me here to take swings at me. Don't pout when I swing back." A burst of nervous laughter scattered through the studio. The producers in the control room were panicking. Cut to commercial, one mouthed. But before they could, Colbert said sharply, "If you're going to insult me on my own show, Senator, you can find your way out that door." Kennedy tilted his head, as if considering it. Then he stood up slowly. "You know what, son? I think I'll do just that." Gasps rippled across the audience. The band stopped playing. Colbert looked momentarily stunned as Kennedy rose from his chair, adjusted his jacket, and started walking toward the edge of the stage. Colbert tried to salvage control. "Senator Kennedy, come on, let's not be dramatic." Kennedy turned. "Microphones still live. I ain't the one putting on a show, Stephen. That'd be you." And with that, he walked off stage. The audience didn't know what to do. Some clapped, others booed, and a few just sat frozen in disbelief. Colbert, standing awkwardly by his desk, tried to recover. "Well, folks, that's the first time a guest's walked out on me." The laughter that followed was weak and uncertain. The show cut abruptly to commercial. But that wasn't the end of it. By the next morning, clips of the confrontation were everywhere: Twitter, YouTube, every cable news channel. Colbert clashes with Kennedy blared across headlines. Conservative pundits hailed Kennedy as a hero for standing up to liberal media arrogance. Liberal commentators accused him of grandstanding for attention. In Louisiana, Kennedy's supporters flooded his office with calls and emails, cheering him on. "You told him, Senator," one caller shouted on a local radio show. "You showed them we're tired of being mocked." Meanwhile, CBS executives held an emergency meeting in New York. The network's PR director, exhausted and pale, said, "We need to frame this as a misunderstanding. No one wants to see Colbert look like he lost control." Colbert, for his part, tried to downplay it. That night, he opened his next monologue with a joke. "Well, folks, if you're keeping score, it's one senator, one host, and zero chill." The audience laughed, but not as loudly as usual. He couldn't shake the feeling that Kennedy had gotten the last word. A few weeks later, Kennedy gave an interview to Fox News. Sitting comfortably in a leather chair, he said, "I didn't go on that show to pick a fight. I went to talk about what matters. But when someone mocks what you stand for, you either sit quiet or you stand up. I stood up." The clip went viral again. The feud became a symbol, depending on who you asked, of either standing firm in the face of media bias or of political theatrics gone too far. Months passed, and both men moved on, at least publicly. But the moment lived on in internet lore. Memes flooded Reddit. Kennedy won, Colbert 0. Another showed Colbert photoshopped into a boxing ring, Kennedy standing victorious. In private, Colbert admitted to friends that the altercation had stung. He prided himself on handling heated guests with humor, not hostility. But Kennedy's calm defiance had thrown him off balance. "He didn't play the game," Colbert said one night over dinner with a producer. "He didn't care if people liked him or not. That's dangerous." As for Kennedy, he turned the event into political capital. At rallies, He'd grin and say, "You never know where telling the truth will get you. Sometimes it gets you applause. Sometimes it gets you kicked off a TV show." Each time, the crowd roared. In the end, both men gained something. Colbert got ratings, and a reminder that not every guest could be contained by punchlines. Kennedy got headlines, and the image of a man too honest for Hollywood. The moment became legend, a flashpoint in the ongoing clash between politics and entertainment, truth and theater, pride and provocation. And somewhere, in the quiet after the cameras had shut off that night, the echo of Kennedy's final words lingered. "I ain't the one putting on a show, Stephen. That'd be you." It was a line no one on television would soon forget.